She wasn't the loud one. She wasn't the funny one. She wasn't even the one customers remembered. Elise Gardner was the type of server who kept her head down, refilled your coffee before you asked, and covered every shift nobody else wanted. 3 years in that diner. No raises, no complaints, just grease stains, aching feet, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, being good would eventually be enough. But people like Elise, they don't get thank you cards. They don't get noticed until the moment they stop being silent. She came in early, stayed late, worked holidays without protest, smiled when customers snapped their fingers or called her sweetheart like she wasn't a person with a name. But Elise never fought back. She believed staying quiet made her strong. She was wrong. Because the day she asked for something back, the day she begged for 1 week off to sit beside her dying father, the answer she got would change her life forever. It was just 1 week. That's all Elise asked for. 7 days. To sit beside the man who raised her. To whisper goodbye while he still remembered her name. To hold his hand while he took his last breath. She didn't cry when she asked. She didn't beg. She just stood in the break room, still wearing her grease-stained apron, and said quietly, "My dad is dying. I need time to be with him." Croft Brennan didn't even look up from the schedule. His pen scratched across the paper like her words didn't matter. Then he said it. "Find someone to cover your shifts, or don't bother coming back." The room went silent. Even the hum of the freezer felt louder than the space between his words. No sympathy, no hesitation. Just a man in a cheap tie picking profits over a daughter's last goodbye. And Elise, she just nodded, walked out, and never looked back. Not one goodbye, not one tear. Because what Croft didn't know was that he hadn't just denied her a week off. He had signed his own destruction. The room was too quiet. Machines beeped in steady, cruel rhythm. Room 247, General Hospital. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead as if even the electricity knew what was coming. Elise sat beside him, her hand wrapped around his. His fingers were colder than she remembered. He didn't say much, didn't have the strength, but he looked at her and smiled, that quiet, tired smile she'd known her whole life, like he was saying, "You're going to be okay." But she wasn't, because this wasn't just a goodbye. This was the end of her whole foundation. The last person who ever made her feel safe was slipping away one breath at a time. She held on tighter, as if her grip could bargain with fate. But fate didn't care, and neither did Croft Brennan. He was probably barking at a busboy about toast while her father took his final breath. There was no funeral crowd. No flowers, just the sound of one machine flatlining and a daughter who never got the chance to grieve out loud. She didn't scream, didn't collapse. She just sat there, still, silent, shattered. A simple refusal, just a no. That's all it took to destroy the last good piece of her. Elise thought the worst was behind her. She buried her father, went back to work, tried to pretend that nothing had changed, even though everything had. Same apron, same customers, same hollow-eyed manager sneering behind the counter. But then he walked in, a man in a dark navy suit, clean-cut, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who didn't come in for eggs and coffee. He stood by the host station, scanning the room like he was looking for someone specific. When his eyes found Elise, he stepped forward without hesitation. Elise Gardner. His voice was calm, controlled, but it carried weight like a command wrapped in courtesy. She nodded, heart suddenly racing. "My name is Director Hayes," he said. "Treasury Department, Financial Crimes Division. We need to talk about your father." The air vanished from the room. Elise forgot how to breathe. Her father, the man who clipped coupons, wore the same 3 shirts and called himself just a boring numbers guy. What could the government possibly want with him? And that's when Director Hayes told her the truth. A truth so far from the world she knew, it felt like fiction, with her name on the cover. They sat in his car, government issued, black leather seats, clean, cold. Director Hayes opened a thick briefcase on his lap filled with documents Elise didn't recognize until she saw one name printed in bold again and again: Arlo Gardner. Your father, Hayes said, was one of the most meticulous forensic accountants we ever worked with. Elise blinked. Wait, what? He nodded. For 15 years, he conducted covert audits. He worked undercover on some of the largest corporate fraud cases in the country. Elise stared at the briefcase, her mind spinning. Her dad, the quiet man who always smelled like coffee and printer ink, the man who fixed leaky faucets and made grilled cheese for dinner, he was investigating criminals. Yes, Hayes said, as if reading her mind. And his final assignment was this. He pulled out one file. Stamped across the top, Hartwell Food Services. Her heart stopped. That's where I work, she whispered. Hayes looked her dead in the eye. Your father was building a case against them. 8 years of tax evasion, tip theft, shell companies, fake employees, and wage fraud on a national scale. Elise's throat went dry. She had been pouring coffee for thieves, smiling at customers whose paychecks were billed on corruption. She'd served toast to men who build their empire by stealing from workers just like her. And the man who raised her had been trying to take them down quietly, alone. Director Hayes leaned forward, serious now, heavy. Your father was cautious, he said, paranoid even. He didn't trust cloud backups, didn't store anything on our servers. Elise furrowed her brow. What does that mean? It means, Hayes said, he encrypted every file, every document, and stored it in multiple cryptocurrency wallets protected by access keys. And you can't find those keys? Elise asked. He shook his head. We've searched everything. His computer, his apartment, even the hospital room. It's like he vanished with them. Silence fell between them, until Hayes said the words that shifted Elise's entire world. Unless he left them for you. Elise blinked. Her thoughts jumped to the desk back home, to the stacks of old notebooks filled with symbols and numbers she never understood, to the USB drives with labels like 6L2 May and HGFD. She remembered the safe, the one hidden behind the bedroom dresser, the one she never opened because she never knew the code. Maybe Director Hayes watched her face change. If you can find those files, Elise, you hold the power to bring down Hartwell. Your father trusted you enough to hide the truth in plain sight. In that moment, Elise felt something strange rising in her chest. Not fear, not confusion, not grief. Power. She wasn't just a server anymore. She was the daughter of a man who built a weapon out of numbers, and that weapon now was in her hands. Elise sat alone in her father's old desk chair. The apartment was too quiet now. No soft tapping on the keyboard, no smell of burnt toast, no faint humming of an old jazz tune from the radio. Just her and the weight of the question, what would he do? Arlo Gardner believed in systems, in the process, in the law. He believed that if you did the right thing long enough, the world would catch up. He spent his life gathering evidence, building airtight cases, trusting that truth, when packaged properly, would win. But when he was dying, the system he served didn't show up, didn't help, didn't even acknowledge he existed. Elise remembered begging for time off, not to travel, not to party, just to hold her father's hand, and she was told, not my problem. So now, the question burned inside her. Did her father's faith in justice die with him? The files were in her hands now. She could hand them to the government. Let them follow their own timelines, their own red tape. Or she could do something else, something faster, something louder, something the system would never expect from someone it always ignored. And Elise Gardner was no longer someone to be overlooked. She was the key to destroying a corrupt empire. The email was short, a subject line with no fluff. "We'd like to talk." The sender, Summit Group, Hartwell's biggest competitor. They'd been trying to buy out Hartwell's locations for years, blocked every time by mysterious regulatory complications. Now, Elise knew exactly what those complications were. She agreed to meet. Private conference room. Downtown tower, glass walls, skyline views, and silence so thick it felt like power had a scent. Across the table sat Victoria Cross Summit's Director of Acquisitions. Sleek, controlled, no nonsense. "I'm told you have something we want," Victoria said. Elise didn't blink. "I have evidence. 8 years of tax fraud, wage theft, shell corporations, all tied to Hartwell." Victoria leaned in slightly. "And what exactly are you asking for?" Elise placed a flash drive on the table. Next to it, a folded piece of paper with a number. $47 million. Victoria raised an eyebrow. 47 million? Elise didn't flinch. "It's exactly what they owe in back taxes. You want the files? That's the price." Silence. Then Victoria smiled. Not condescending, not surprised, but respectful. "Justice with interest," she said. "I like it." Victoria slid the contract across the table. "It's all here. 47 million. Full acquisition rights. We'll handle it discreetly." Elise didn't reach for the pen. "Not yet," she said. "There are conditions." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "We're listening." Elise leaned forward, voice steady. "First, every employee Hartwell exploited, they get paid, not minimum wage. Real compensation, back pay, overtime, tips, benefits, all of it." Victoria nodded slowly. "Second, this doesn't get buried. You don't just buy the evidence to make it disappear. You use it, publicly, expose them, let the world know what they did." A pause. Then Elise added the part she hadn't even planned to say out loud. "This isn't about money for me. This is personal. My father died while these people stole from others like me. You want these files. You carry out his justice, or I walk." The room was quiet, heavy. Victoria looked at Elise, then smiled again. But this time it wasn't polite. It was respect. "We'll pay the workers. We'll burn Hartwell to the ground. And we'll make sure everyone knows who lit the match." Elise picked up the pen. Her hand didn't shake. She signed. And just like that, a girl who was once denied time to mourn became the author of a corporate reckoning. The doorbell chimed. Same greasy diner, same cracked tile floor. But Elise Gardner didn't walk in the way she used to. No apron, no order pad, no shame. She walked with purpose, with silence, with something in her hand. Croft Brennan stood behind the register, tapping at the till, eyes narrowed like always. He didn't even look up. "We're busy. What do you want?" Elise stepped forward, calm, collected, unbothered. "I have something for you," she said. She laid the paper on the counter. Just one single sheet. No drama, no build-up, just truth printed in black ink. Croft branched down. Summit Group. Transaction confirmation. Amount, $47 million. Purpose, acquisition of regulatory evidence against Hartwell Food Services. He frowned. Read it again. And then his face changed. Confusion, then fear, then recognition. "What is this?" he asked, voice cracking. Elise looked him dead in the eyes. "It's the receipt for selling your company to your biggest competitor. They bought the evidence. Every file my father collected, every theft you signed off on, every lie you turned into payroll math." She stepped closer. Her voice didn't rise, but every word cut like broken glass. "You've been under investigation for years, Croft. You just didn't know the person gathering intel was standing behind your coffee station the whole time. By 7 a.m. the next morning, it had begun. Federal agents swept into Hartwell locations across the country, from Florida to Oregon. Uniformed teams in bulletproof vests, marked vans, search warrants in hand. Customers holding breakfast menus watched in stunned silence as investigators marched through kitchens, offices, storage rooms. Computers were unplugged, hard drives bagged, cash registers sealed. The headlines hit by noon. FBI launches multi-state raid on Hartwell Food Services. Executives arrested in $47 million tax fraud scandal. Employees speak out. We were treated like trash. 3 top executives were arrested that day: the CFO, the head of compliance, and the regional manager who mentored Croft Brennan personally. That man, now in handcuffs, had once taught Croft how to manipulate schedules to avoid paying overtime, how to falsify employee hours to dodge benefits, how to skim cash from tips without leaving a trace. Now he was facing 20 years in federal prison. And Elise, she watched it unfold on live TV, not with glee, but with a calm, quiet satisfaction. Because the collapse wasn't just justice, it was proof. Proof that her father's work had meaning. Proof that her voice, once dismissed, was now loud enough to shake walls. Croft always carried himself like he owned the room. Chin high, back straight, voice just loud enough to remind everyone who was in charge. But now he sat in a cold, gray interrogation room. No tie, no confidence, just sweat stains and shaking fingers. The headlines had named names. The agents had come knocking. And the walls he built with arrogance crumbled. His bank accounts frozen. His assets seized. His reputation dead before lunch. He watched helplessly as his company's name was dragged through every network. He turned on the TV and saw Elise's face, not crying, not small, but powerful, poised, unapologetic. Croft tried to spin it at first, tried blaming upper management, tried playing dumb, tried calling it a misunderstanding. But the files Elise delivered were airtight. Dates, names, transactions, his signature. Everything he ever stole, every tip, every unpaid hour, every forged form was laid bare. And in that sterile, fluorescent-lit room, Croft Brennan finally understood he hadn't just fired a grieving daughter. He'd fired the wrong daughter. His voice cracked. His hands trembled. His entire persona, the smirking, condescending manager, evaporated. And Elise, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need revenge to be loud. She'd simply lit the fuse and walked away. Croft never saw the explosion coming. Elise didn't vanish after the headlines. She could have. She had $47 million in her account. She could have bought a house on the coast, disappeared, started over with quiet luxury. But she didn't. Because what her father built, what he believed in, wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. So Elise did what no one expected. She took the money and built a shield. The Elise Gardner Foundation for Workers' Rights. A name whispered in corporate boardrooms, feared by bad bosses, praised by underpaid employees everywhere. The mission was simple: hold companies accountable, defend workers who couldn't afford lawyers, investigate wage theft, fight harassment, and shine a light where no one else dared look. Elise started small: 1 office, 6 staff members, and a war chest large enough to scare even the most deep-pocketed CEOs. But she had more than money. She had momentum. She had the truth. And she had a name that now meant something. This isn't charity, she told the press. This is accountability. Elise didn't start with strangers. She started with survivors. Penny, single mom, 2 kids, worked the front register at Hartwell for 6 years, never once got a raise. Lost her job, her insurance, and her childcare overnight when the raids hit. Now she sat behind a real desk as operations coordinator for the Elise Gardner Foundation. Same sharp eyes, same calm under pressure, but this time with respect, with benefits, with a salary she never dreamed of. Then there was Rue, 4 years flipping eggs in Hartwell's back kitchen. She was quiet like Elise had once been, invisible until she started asking the right questions. Now she led the documentation and evidence division, training workers on how to record violations, how to build a case, how to speak when the system tries to silence them. The kitchen guys, the ones who never got full hours, never got health coverage, never got a name on their paychecks. Elise hired them too as field investigators. They went undercover. They walked into restaurants and retail stores with hidden cameras, gathering the kind of evidence most lawyers never see. She didn't rescue them, she armed them, and in return, they helped her build a movement. The headlines didn't scream her name. There were no parades. No interviews on daytime television. No magazine covers. But Elise didn't need that. What she needed was results, and she got them. In under 9 months, the Arlo Gardner Foundation filed lawsuits against 12 companies, from chain restaurants to logistics warehouses, places that shaved hours off time cards, that lost overtime, that deducted lunch breaks that never existed. They fought back, of course. Lawyers, threats, non-disclosure offers. But Elise had evidence. Testimonies, surveillance, paper trails that screamed louder than any denial. By year's end, they had recovered over $2 million in stolen wages. Hundreds of workers were paid back. More than a few managers were quietly let go. And Elise, she stayed out of the spotlight, worked from a small corner office, answered her own emails, refilled the break room coffee like it was second nature. She didn't chase fame. She chased change, like her father did, one case at a time, one worker at a time. One piece of justice slowly reclaimed. The courtroom was cold, not just the air, but the silence. Croft Brennan sat in the defendant's chair, no longer in a name-tag uniform or smug little smirk, just a wrinkled suit, a face pale from months of depositions, headlines, and sleepless nights. His lawyer tried everything, blamed Elise, blamed Hartwell, blamed stress and poor decisions made under pressure. But the evidence was steel. The numbers didn't lie. The testimonies couldn't be shaken. And Elise, she didn't say a word. She sat in the second row, back straight, eyes calm, hands folded, like she was praying not for vengeance, but for closure. When the judge delivered the sentence, 8 years in federal prison plus $300,000 in restitution, Croft blinked once, then lowered his head. Defeated, ruined, alone. His house repossessed, his car gone. His wife filed for divorce 3 days after the raid. His kids didn't show up to court, and Elise, she stood up and walked out, still silent, still powerful, because sometimes justice doesn't scream. It just watches and walks away. The letter came on a Tuesday. No return address, just a faded postmark and a government-issued envelope. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Croft Brennan's handwriting, shaky, uneven, unrecognizable. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to feel like I had power over something in my life. It wasn't about you, Elise. He called her by name. For the first time. No waitress, no kid, just Elise. She read the letter once, then again, and she felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just the clarity of someone who had already let go and moved on. She folded the paper. No reply, no rage, no drama, because sometimes silence is the most merciless verdict. Elise stood up, walked to the window of her office, the one with sunlight hitting the Arlo Gardner Foundation sign just right. Behind her, a folder marked with a new name, a new complaint, a new case, because there were more Crofts out there, and she wasn't finished yet. 2 years later, the Arlo Gardner Foundation had grown teeth. What started with a $47 million check and one grieving daughter had now become one of the most feared names in corporate boardrooms across 3 states: North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama. 3 red pins on Elise's office map, each one a battlefield where workers had won. Over $50 million in stolen wages, unpaid overtime, misclassified contracts returned to janitors, dishwashers, warehouse workers, single moms, and immigrant crews. Board members started whispering the foundation's name like it was a ghost. Don't let the Gardner girl hear about this. If she shows up, lawyer up. But Elise didn't want fear. She wanted change. She set up community legal clinics, trained former fast food workers to be case investigators, gave scholarships to whistleblowers' kids. The legacy wasn't her name. It was what people whispered after justice showed up. We didn't think anyone would fight for us until she did. The files landed on Elise's desk on a rainy Thursday. Thick, bulging folders with handwritten notes and blurry security photos. Victims, mostly women, mostly immigrants, mostly invisible. The employer, Eastridge Hospitality Group, a 5-state luxury hotel chain that looked perfect on the outside but was rotting on the inside. Allegations of sexual harassment, stolen tips, fake timesheets, unpaid overtime, and threats. Supervisors forcing female housekeepers to earn their hours. Security guards watching and laughing. Elise didn't blink. She called her team. Penny, now a legal strategist. Rue, leading investigations. 3 new interns, all former wage theft victims. And a young lawyer who used to scrub floors at Eastridge. "This one's different," Elise said. "This one, we bring the cameras." The strategy wasn't just to win in court. It was to show the world what happens behind locked hotel doors. Another war was starting. Elise was already lacing up her boots. The diner was quiet. It hadn't changed much. Same peeling booths, same flickering neon sign, same scent of burnt coffee and frozen fries. Elise sat at the corner table, the one her father used to sit at after double shifts. She didn't come to be seen. She came to remember. Her fingers ran along the edge of the cracked table. She whispered almost to herself. "My father laid the foundation. I just lit the fire." In her bag was a letter. It was from a janitor in Mississippi, a man who got his job back with full back pay after 7 years of silence. He said one line that stayed with her. "I didn't think anyone remembered men like us." Elise folded the letter, stood up, and walked out. No applause, no spotlight, no press waiting outside. Just a ripple of quiet revolution. And the truth? This story began with one no and ended with an entire system on fire. Lesson: sometimes justice doesn't come from the courtroom. It comes from a daughter who refused to stay silent. From one person brave enough to say, "If no one else will fight for the forgotten, I will." Elise Gardner taught us this. When systems fail, ordinary people must rise. When the world says you're not important enough, you prove them wrong, not with anger, but with impact. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They're often the ones holding the match that lights the revolution. If Elise's story moved you, if you've ever been ignored, underestimated, or told to sit down, then this channel is for you. Subscribe now and join us as we tell the stories of the unheard, the unseen, and the unstoppable. Because one story can change everything, and yours might be next.